Welcome to the Catholic Audio Media Podcast, and we are here every single Monday through Friday, bringing you the program from your favorite podcast platform, wherever that may be. And yesterday we heard the first part of our interview with Stephen Gesinski. We're going to continue with that interview in the latter part of the program. But first, we want to talk about what today is in the church, and today is none other than the feast day of Martha, Mary, and Lazarus. Actually, it's not a feast, so you won't be hearing the Gloria at Mass today. It is, in fact, a memorial, but it's got some interesting aspects to it. Plus, we do get to see the Exodus story as well continue. But we want to look at that within context, and we want to see that because, there's a really important message about Martha, Mary, and Lazarus. And this story is a classic example. If you look carefully at the story, you will recognize that Jesus says no to Martha's request. So, in other words, even though this was done in the physical world, it's still a form of prayer. And he says no to her prayer and then answers in a way well beyond her expectations and well beyond everyone's expectations, because, of course, she raises Lazarus. And always keep that in mind, because anytime we pray for something, we're praying within the context of our own expectations. And many times, the Lord will exceed them. I remember a long, long time ago, they had the fire rally. Let me see if I can remember what fire is. Faith, intercession, repentance, I think it was, and evangelization. Fire rally. And it was various speakers. Ralph Martin was one, and I can't remember all the speakers. I remember Ralph Martin was one of them. And when it came to intercession, which was the eye, one of the things to pray for is to the wisdom to know what to pray for. In other words, you may see a problem and you may look for a solution to the problem. And so you ask the Lord, this is the problem. This is what I see as the solution. You may not put it all this way, but And then come to find out, if you pray and ask the Lord to help you to understand what to pray for, you may realize that you're praying for the wrong solution. You may want to see the solution eliminated, and come to find out the reason. I'll come up with a good example, actually, now I think about it. The reason for the problem has nothing to do with the solution, which would eliminate the solution, but it wouldn't really solve the problem. Now, when am I giving an example? There's a great story from St. Francis' life. And that was, now granted, this is before gunpowder, and you'll understand why I said that. So there is this wolf that's terrorizing a town in Italy. And they're all upset at the wolf and stuff. And they used to say that St. Francis could talk to animals. And this is one of the reasons why they say that. So that came, he was talking to the animals or whoever. He understood what the need was. So they're trying to get the wolf to go away. Now today, how would you get rid of the wolf? Simple. I'd take all my AR-15 and I'd deal with the wolf just like that. But what was the real problem? The wolf was starving and he was just looking for food. So what St. Francis said is, your problem with the wolf is not that the wolf is this vicious attacker. The problem is he's hungry. So what you need to do is to feed the wolf, and as long as the wolf is understood that you will care for him, he'll leave you alone and you'll leave him alone. And so it worked that way. But you see, there was a problem. The solution was get rid of the wolf. But that really wasn't related to the real problem. The real problem was the wolf was starving and was trying to get food. And once everyone understood that, they decided, hey, the solution's really simple. We make sure the wolf is fed. That simple. So you see that. Well, that works in prayer too. You may pray for something, and you may pray over and over for something, and you're not getting the solution. And one of the things to pray for is ask the Lord to give you the wisdom of what to pray for. Now, those in the charismatic community may be familiar with the gift of tongues. And although some people, when you hear tongues, they just go, oh no, don't mention that stuff. Oh no, that's all that crazy stuff. Well, it's in the Bible. It's in the Catechism. It is real. They really exist. And it's not some wild, crazy thing coming from wild, crazy people. It actually is very biblical. It's within Catholic tradition. Although there are things you need to know. The Council of Trent teaches on it, but says, if someone has the gifts of tongues, it doesn't mean anything about their holiness. It just means they have the gift of tongues. Anyone can have the gift of tongues that the Lord may give to them, and it doesn't mean anything. So it doesn't mean anything about that person. So that's an important distinction as well. But what is the whole story of the gift of tongues? You use the gift of tongues to pray, to allow the Lord to pray through you in what you don't know what to pray for. Again, in the American audience, that really gets people to panic a bit. Because the Americans, our culture is all about control. If you look very carefully in American culture, and you get Americans around someone who's speaking a language and they don't know what the language it is, that's going to send them like the old Casper, the friendly ghost commercials, or cartoons rather, whenever they saw Casper. Always the case. But it is a real reality, but it's built on the same principle. Ask the Lord what he wants you to pray for when you have a need, and you may find out what you think you need is not what you need. And you see that story in Martha, Mary, and Lazarus. What is it that Martha and Mary saw was a problem, and Lazarus too? Lazarus was sick and dying. So to prevent that from happening, all they needed was for Jesus to show up and heal Lazarus. But Jesus chooses not to show up. Why? Because he's going to do something that is beyond their imagination. And that which he's going to do, which of course we know from the story, is he's going to teach about the resurrection of that is promised. Fascinating story. It comes up in every Holy Week, and I always bring it out in every Holy Week. The Pharisees want to kill Lazarus because people are coming to follow Jesus because he raised Lazarus from the dead. And I always say, how evil do you have to be in order to want to kill someone who was raised from the dead? But that's where they are. Another good question to ask, because this is not in the Bible at all. And some people may go, wait a minute, I want to talk about that. That's stuff I don't want to get into. But it's still a legitimate question. Did Lazarus experience a near-death experience as we understand them now? Did he experience that? There is no history of that in the Bible. We do not know. No story about that. But there's a famous story about a saint. I was talking about that the other day. Famous story about a saint, and unfortunately I can't remember the saint. If anyone happens to know who the saint is and wants to leave a message, I'd appreciate it. So there's a famous story about a saint who he is about to be executed, and whatever device they were going to use to execute him broke. It may have been the gallows, or it may have been something, or maybe guillotine. I forget what it was, but it broke. So here he is just about to be executed, and the device broke. So what they had to do is they had to pull him off the device and pull him aside and fix the device so that they could execute him. Imagine being in that position. Well, what happened when it was time for his execution, he ran up to this device. And they're like, why did you run? And he said, if you saw what I saw was awaiting for me, which just before this device broke is what he saw it, you'd run up here too. A fascinating reality. So that's a legitimate question about Lazarus. And remember, people came to experience Jesus because of Lazarus. So there is no record of him saying anything in the Bible, but it would be interesting to see what in fact did he say. In the story of Exodus, we have the reality that Moses has to get new tablets, because the ones he was carrying down the mountain, he breaks in his anger when he sees remember the line from the Ten Commandments, when he sees the revelry. That is not war, that is revelry. And then he throws the tablets down. Well, he has to get the new tablets, and then he encounters God in the tent. And when he does, he has to wear a veil over his face, because the glory of the Lord is reflected in his face, and no one can look upon it. It is so bright. Powerful stories of this encounter with God, the likes of which we also see around the time of the Transfiguration, which, don't forget, is August 6th. Strangely enough, the Transfiguration, and we'll talk about it then, as we always talk about it, strangely enough, this feast of the great light that they see on the mountain of Moses, Jesus, and Elijah is also recognized as the same day historically that the nuclear bomb, or the atomic bomb rather, was dropped on Hiroshima. So you have these two images of light. One is very life-giving because it comes from the creation and the creator, and the other coming from the creature that they have created, not literally created because they didn't make it ex nihilo, from nothing. They made it from what was available, is this great force of destruction. So there's some powerful reality there. But there we see this great powerful light that is reflected in the face of Moses, demonstrating that God's light, and remember, God is represented as light because he is the source of all that brings us light, including light itself. And what is the opposite of light? Well, what happens when we don't have light? We have darkness. So what is darkness? Darkness is the absence of light. What is evil? Evil is the absence of good. If you walk away from God, where do you walk? You walk into darkness in material terms and spiritual terms. So you don't want to do that. And that's all represented in this powerful manifestation of God and the way his light reflects on Moses. We're going to talk more on the other side of the break, and then we're going to go into our second part of our interview with Steve Gesinski. In the meantime, we will be right back right after this. You can now leave a message for us, which we can air and discuss on this program. Just call 617-297-7452. That's 617-297-7452. 617-297-7452. Feel free to call, leave a comment, a question, or even feedback, and we may play it on the air. I can discuss your comment or question as well, so give that a try. 617-297-7452, 617-297-7452. Don't forget to subscribe to us on Patreon. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Check us out. Check what we have to offer. Previews of upcoming podcasts. Previews of upcoming columns over at catholicaudiomedia.substack.com. Your ability to comment, make suggestions, even make suggestions in upcoming programs. Check us out. Patreon.com, Catholic Audio Media. We're back, and we're going to talk in the second half with Steve Gesinski. We began our interview with him yesterday, and we're going to continue the interview in just a couple minutes here. Remember, Steve is the author of the book Film Forming Faith. It's coming to us from their podcast, in a sense, because it's called A Catholicism in Coffee publication. So if you don't know anything about Stephen Gesinski, he has a podcast with his wife, Beth, on YouTube called Catholicism and Coffee, and they have various topics that they discuss. And Steve, of course, talked to us yesterday. He's been married about not quite 3 years, almost 3 years. He came to the faith. Well, he's a cradle Catholic. He is what is known as a revert as opposed to a convert. So he came back to the faith after attending a Pentecostal college, he explains. So fascinating stuff. And he is teaching all about all that, not only in our interview, but in other places. And it reminds me a little bit about myself, because remember, I came back to the church not at a Pentecostal college, but I came back because of the evangelicals I encountered in the Navy. And they were really fascinating in that they just had this drive to preach the word and to lead people to know Christ. Now, many of the evangelicals believe that all you have to do is say the sinner's prayer or be baptized or be baptized. And you are saved, which, of course, we as Catholics believe, and many other Christian faiths believe, that you have to respond to Jesus' generous gift by the way you live your life. But in either case, they led me back to the faith. I remember I was at a Bible study one time run by Methodists. And always people will say, oh, that's okay. You do want to be careful, though, but some Bible studies, and I had an Assembly of God minister teach me this. He showed me this. They'll say, we're just going to have a Bible study. Well, what denomination? He asked them. Well, no, it's just a Bible study. He says, no. If they don't name a denomination, then there is something else going on, and don't go. Really interesting that he brought that out. And then finally they gave their denomination, which was a local cult. And he said, no, we want nothing to do with you. Have a good day. Let's go to our interview with Steve Gesinski, where we go talk about Robert Heinlein, among other things. Wow. I knew his nephew. And by the way, a little story that happened at one of a parish that I was in, some of the youth group, they went to a dentist, and they said, yeah, he's our dentist and everything. He's got some brother is like a writer. Oh, really? What's the name of your dentist? Dr. Vonnegut. I went, your dentist brother is Kurt Vonnegut. Like, oh, wow. Yeah, doctor, yeah, some writer. Oh, you're kidding me. You touch on fascinating things, and like you have a whole variety of movies. You range from the science fiction to It's a Wonderful Life, to the Fugitive, the Mask of Zorro. So you have just, and each one of them you focus on a particular story. One of my favorite movies for religious themes is Return of the Jedi #6, which I love to explain is actually the third movie, but it's actually the 6th chapter and the whole bit.
Yeah.
But I love the ending of the movie, and you have the lesson here, resisting darkness, and that whole ending where, I hope I'm not saying too much of a spoiler, where
I spoil all the movies in my books. So
there you go. Okay. Where Darth Vader is standing there on this molten planet and saying, all this is mine. And I said, that is right out of the Devil's Playbook.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty... It's pretty interesting to see the whole darkness and playing with various themes. One thing that Lucas did well was he was very big on themes. He didn't always execute them well, but he got the general idea across overall pretty well. But I grew up to appreciate that. Actually, funny enough, this film was actually the bonding point, the first point that my wife and I were like, okay, you have potential as, someone pretty awesome. Because we asked each other what our favorite Star Wars movie was. And, the usual answer is Empire for everybody. And it's understandable. It is the strongest of the Star Wars films from a filmmaking perspective. But I just love Return of the Jedi, and she was like, okay, it's Return of the Jedi, and I'm like, awesome, so's mine. So
Yeah.
you're like,
Wow.
okay, we're on a similar wavelength, so there's something there.
Oh, isn't that great? And there is so much. There is so much in that movie. Just I love that whole scene of "I want your anger." I'm like, wow, that just says so much, and it's true. You can see that. It's a Wonderful Life, one of my favorite movies. Always love to be reminded that it was a complete flop, and became such a huge success through television, and even more so that they decided not to renew the copyright until finally it became so popular that we have to find something to renew here so we can make money on this, and then they found the music. And you talk about faithful marriage, which, you can say that's the story, has a major part of the story. But tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, it's funny because I was a little hesitant to actually write that chapter because I'm pretty newly married. My wife and I haven't even had our third wedding anniversary as of this recording.
Wow.
So, but I just always, with George and Mary, their relationship is of, there's the stereotypical, 1930s, 1940s housewife who they're just trying to, get by, but she genuinely wants to support her husband and he wants to, be a good provider and all this stuff. And, and it's a lot of, and he has this internal struggle and she understands him to a strong degree. And through that understanding creates this loving relationship. And it's so important it's essential to the film. It's not highlighted as well as I would like, but that's just me. I didn't write the script. Probably a good thing. But it's so essential, the fact that, he gets this old broken down house for them to raise a family in. And she supports him in his work by being, a genuinely a good wife who's there to help him. And she is the true biblical definition of submission, which is under the mission. And his mission is...
Ooh, that's a good way to put it.
I heard it in pre-Cana classes, actually. So I was like, ooh, that's going to stay in my mind forever.
Yeah.
So she's under his mission as, the owner of the president of the building and loan is to help people be able to afford a real home. And she is there to support him. They open a house for this Italian family, and she's there with him, giving bread and wine and such to the family as a welcoming into things. Even when the Great Depression hits, they're about to leave on their honeymoon, and she's like, "Okay, we've got cash," and people were like, The banks are closed. What are we supposed to do? We need this money and such." And she goes, "Okay, we've got cash. We'll give it away." And because she knows that her husband's job is very important, it helps provide for the family. And she knows that he can't leave these people hanging. And just tons of examples. And I try to highlight them as much as I can in the chapter, but there's only so much I can do in a few pages for a over an hour film. And I wanted to highlight that and to remind myself that I need to be a husband worthy of such devotion, because my wife is superb in that regard as well.
Well, you bring that out so well because, as you bring that up, you've got Mary in the movie who, you're right, is this partner actually with him, and she's the one that basically helps keep the mission going, right down to when the whole disaster happens and Uncle Billy becomes, he loses money. And there they are. She's getting a hold of the friends while he just goes into a complete panic. And yeah, that whole saying, behind every successful man is a strong woman, or I forget exactly. But yeah, you have a great point. I didn't notice it that way until you bring it up. She is the backbone in that whole operation.
Yeah. And I find that, and I wanted to highlight that. Because, I've seen it in my own life. A lot of good men just trying to make their way through, and they have solid wives who are willing to help them. And I've had, before I met my wife, obviously, but I had some bad relationships where the girl and I were not on the same wavelength, and that led to breakups of varying degrees, good, bad, whatever. And that's what helped me choose my wife, because I knew that we would work together. We would work well together. I didn't make it easy for her, a lot of times. But we stuck it out, and here we are making a podcast and reading books together. So, it didn't turn out too bad.
We're going to be back more. We're going to be back again tomorrow with more from Steve Gesinski. He is the author of the book Film Forming Faith. You can find it on Amazon in all forms, except for audiobook, which is coming out in the future. But in the meantime, it is available. It's not a very long book. It's about 75 pages, which is great, especially, when you want to read a book. And, you say, well, do I have enough time? And one of the things that it's interesting for me, because I always, with very few exceptions, I always read the book before I do the interview, because I don't want to just do a cold interview without having an understanding of what's in the book, because it's not fair to the author and it's not fair to the listener. So I always read the book. And 75 pages is easier for me to read than the one I'm reading right now, which is 283. Although, fascinating story. I'm not going to tell you what it is. It's going to come up in a future interview, and you are going to go, oh, wow, I'm serious. But this is also fascinating. This is kind of like, oh, wow, and the fact that these movies have these important lessons. I never thought of that. And I've seen that in movies all the time. One of my favorites is Unforgiven. There is such an important message in that. Of course, all the Clint Eastwood movies, when he directed them, had these powerful messages. Gran Torino is another one. And some of the messages seem to counteract his early days in not only his Westerns, but also his Dirty Harry films. The message, the theme I get, for example, from Unforgiven is, if you play with evil, evil will come. And if you contrast that to the famous line out of the Dirty Harry movies that my mother used to quote me all the time, by the way, go ahead, make my day. She loved that line. So go ahead, make my day. But you contrast that with this powerful story, The Unforgiven, where Unforgiven, where you're looking at this message. If you play with evil, evil will come. And anyway, we're going to be back tomorrow, more with Steve, and also talking about more from Exodus and Moses. So we will see you then. Have yourself a blessed day until tomorrow. You can now leave a message for us, which we can air and discuss on this program. Just call 617-297-7452. That's 617-297-7452. 617-297-7452. Feel free to call, leave a comment, a question, or even feedback, and we may play it on the air. I can discuss your comment or question as well. So give that a try.
617-297-7452, 617-297-7452.
Don't forget to subscribe to us on Patreon. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Check us out. Check what we have to offer. Previews of upcoming podcasts. Previews of upcoming columns over at catholicaudiomedia.substack.com. Your ability to comment, make suggestions, even make suggestions in upcoming programs. Check us out. Patreon.com, Catholic Audio Media.